Impact World Champion Moose continues his feud with Josh Alexander by attacking his wife Jade Chung in an angle at an independent event over the weekend. Trish Stratus, WWE Hall of Famer, reveals she had negotiations with Impact Wrestling back in 2007 after her retirement. Plus, a match involving PCO and a professional wrestling legend has been announced for WrestleMania weekend. And Matt Hardy gives some details on the Final Deletion match that have never been spoken about before. All this and more in today's Impact Wrestling News. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into today in the world of Impact Wrestling. So let's start off talking about Moose. Now, we know that Moose is going to be defending the Impact World Championship against Josh Alexander in the main event of the upcoming Impact Rebellion pay-per-view. But things have got very personal recently, haven't they? They got personal when Moose showed up to the house of Josh Alexander, and involving Alexander's family has continued at an independent event over the weekend. Impact World Champion Moose attacked Jade Chung at an independent show on Saturday in an angle furthering the storyline with Chung's husband, that being Josh Alexander. Following his match at Saturday's Destiny World Wrestling event in Ontario, Alexander was celebrating in the ring with Chung and their children. As Chung cut a promo, Moose ran in and speared Chung. Alexander then carried Chung out of the arena. Now, multiple camera angles were used in shooting the angle, including one following Moose from backstage to the ring prior to the attack. Impact posted the video of the attack on their Twitter account on Sunday, stating that the actions would be addressed during Thursday's Impact Wrestling episode. Moose is set to defend the Impact World Championship against Alexander at Rebellion on Saturday, April 23rd. Look, there is lots of different things to talk about when it comes to this one. We did speak about previously that some additional footage was going to be filmed between now and Rebellion, because all of the in-ring stuff and all of the episodes of Impact Wrestling on Access TV have been filmed. They were filmed at the recent Philadelphia tapings in the 2300 Arena, the former ECW arena. And we had heard that some additional stuff was going to be filmed. Now, I'd speculated before that the additional stuff that I thought was going to be filmed would be during WrestleMania weekend, and it would probably involve, say, Nick Aldis and Mickie James, and that would maybe set up a match that could possibly happen at Rebellion. We know that the mixed tag team match is happening at Multiverse of Matches, with Nick Aldis and Mickie James representing the NWA to go up against Impact Wrestling's Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green. Even though Matt Cardona is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, I think that's going to continue. Now, it turns out, of course, that other stuff that was going to be filmed between now and Rebellion involves this angle in which Moose has attacked Josh Alexander's wife. Now, I have seen this to be quite divisive, to say the least. There have been people that are upset with it because, of course, Moose, look, let's say what's happened. He was arrested on a battery charge in May 2009 after allegedly throwing his then wife down a flight of stairs during an argument. He was an NFL player at the time and was suspended for the first game of the 2010 season as a result of the arrest. Now, at the time, these allegations from 2009 reportedly led to WWE deciding not to offer him a contract. Now, subsequently, last year, when Moose's contract was expiring, WWE did make him an offer, and he ultimately decided to stay with Impact Wrestling. So I think that's worth pointing out there. And also, I am a big advocate of saying that people can change, they can grow, and I don't know if charges were filed as well at the time, which I think is worth pointing out too. But a lot of people are saying, look, this angle is in bad taste. Now, obviously, he showed up to the home of Josh Alexander on an episode of Impact Wrestling, and I said I felt uncomfortable with that segment, not so much because of the history and sort of the stuff surrounding Moose or anything like that, just because I felt that the feud didn't really need it. I felt that the feud was personal enough as it was. Keep things... And this is kind of a rule of thumb for me in pro wrestling. I want to just keep things involved in the ring. Keep things involved in fighting for the championship. Historically, yes, you have had some good moments when people show up to people's houses, like Triple H just retired, right? And people will still talk about when Triple H showed up at the home of Randy Orton and threw Randy Orton through the window, and that stemmed from Randy Orton, RKO and Stephanie McMahon, and sealing it with a kiss and all that kind of stuff. When it got personal, when and that was good stuff. I just felt that this feud didn't need it. I feel like it's unnecessary. It's not needed. I was quite uncomfortable with the kids being involved with it, even though, look, Josh Alexander and his wife obviously are okay with it. They've okayed it. So it's not as if they're doing this without the approval of everyone involved. As I said, I just feel the feud doesn't need it. That's my biggest thing with it, is that the screw job's already happened. Josh Alexander won the Impact World Championship at Bound for Glory in October, and just mere moments after winning it, Moose cashes in his Coil Shot Gauntlet trophy. He screws Josh Alexander, and then Josh Alexander doesn't get an opportunity. His contract expires. It looks like his career might be... all that kind of stuff. That's the story. That's all you need. This extra stuff, the going to the house, the Moose now attacking a woman... it's just not needed, in my opinion. It's just not needed. Now, we know what is going to happen on the upcoming episode of Impact because the spoilers are out there, so we won't spoil that. They do make a little bit more sense now, I guess. I mean, what happens on an upcoming episode of Impact, like I said, I won't spoil it, but I just assumed that Josh Alexander was frustrated with, or annoyed rather, angry with what happened at the incident when Moose came to the house. But this is almost on another level too. The issue always is with anything like this, and this was kind of the problem with WrestleMania 25. I spoke about that Triple H Randy Orton storyline, and I think this is a good example to make of it, is that when you make the storyline this personal, when people are invading homes, they're attacking spouses, they're doing all that kind of stuff, to settle it in a wrestling match with defined wrestling rules like disqualifications and countouts seems silly. So they're going to have to change that Rebellion main event into some kind of gimmick match, whether it is a steel cage match, whether it's a no disqualification match, whether whatever it may be. If the match is a standard wrestling match, then that's when people look at it and go, well, that's illogical, because Josh Alexander would want to kill this guy. He would want to do serious damage. And now it's not even really about the World Championship anymore. It's about defending his family and getting back on this guy that's terrorized him and his wife. So that's why I'm not massively keen on these kind of angles, because for me, the storyline should be about the championship. Once you make it about something else, the championship isn't important, and how do you settle that in a normal match that isn't a gimmick match? So I'm assuming that they're going to be going into a gimmick match direction, because if they don't, they've kind of painted themselves into a corner. That's how I look at the situation. Now, this is quite an interesting story, actually. Trish Stratus has revealed that she actually had negotiations with Impact, then known as TNA Wrestling, back in 2007 after she retired. WWE Hall of Famer Trish Stratus was recently interviewed by ET Canada as she discussed the talk she had back in 2007 when she was approached by Impact Wrestling about joining the organization. This was during the time when TNA was introducing their Knockouts division and was recruiting women wrestlers from all across the country. She said this, quote, "There was a point where, TNA had reached out to me and they wanted, it happened to be around the time there was a new women's championship being introduced. It was around that time, and it was a storyline pitch like that, because it was like, hey, women are a viable part of the show and we would like you to be a part of it. Back then, it was kind of like, I don't know, we use women on the show. Would you like to be part of it? That's what it was, right? I knew what I could do. I knew the training I'd done, what I could offer as an athlete to the world of sports entertainment, but I didn't know if they necessarily knew, right? And like the fact that I know I've been, not to say I was seasoned, but I had a 2-year career already as a fitness model, and I'd worked internationally. I'd done interviews as well. I'd done media, so I had that aspect I could bring in. Now, obviously, it ultimately did not happen. But it's interesting. It's interesting. Just makes you wonder what could have been. Certainly, it makes you wonder what could have been. At that point, she had retired, and look, she stepped away from pro wrestling because she wanted to pursue other things, start a family, and all that kind of stuff. And it was the right call. And whilst the Knockouts division was great, and it still is, when it was introduced in 2007, I understand the wow factor of Trish Stratus coming in, but with what they accomplished at the time, with the likes of Gail Kim and Awesome Kong, I don't know if they necessarily totally needed it, but it's always just interesting to know what could have been. Absolutely. Now, Impact Wrestling star PCO's got a big match lined up for WrestleMania weekend because WrestleCon announced on Twitter a 10-man tag team match for the Mark Hitchcock Memorial Super Show. The team captains are Atsushi Onita and PCO. Now, the teammates will be announced the day of the show, which is Thursday, March 31st. The WrestleCon event is taking place at the Fairmont Hotel in Dallas, Texas, and will be available to stream on Fight, which is certainly fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Whenever Atsushi Onita is involved in anything nowadays, you just go like, wow, he's still going, and what's he going to do? I mean, I don't know. I mean, PCO's wild. Like I said, I've actually been, really enjoying the stuff he's been doing in Impact recently with Jonah. So who knows how many other Impact Wrestling stars will be involved in this, if they'll be filming it. There'll be Impact cameras there. They did mention that there is going to be stuff that's going to be filmed during WrestleCon weekend, and we know that Impact are going to have their Multiverse of Matches event too. So who's to say that they don't film it and maybe get some Onita content for Impact Wrestling in the future? Anything's possible. Anything's possible. Finally, Matt Hardy has been talking about the Final Deletion, because why wouldn't he? And he's also spoken about how it was actually a Billy Corgan idea, who had the idea of Matt and Jeff Hardy facing each other at the Hardy compound. This was when, of course, Corgan was still working with TNA/Impact Wrestling. He said, quote, he said, if Jeff does beat you in all these matches, and I'd said the same thing, I think I just need to win a match where all the stakes are on the line. He said, what if you have like a match like in your barn, in that sort of dome of deletion? Maybe you and Jeff have a match there, and it's going to be like an empty arena match. I think that was his vision. This was what he was visualizing whenever we talked about the original idea for the match, where everything was on the line, but it started growing. The more I talked with Jeremy Borash, and he'd been to my house to shoot several vignettes and whatnot, it became a fight all over the compound. It's like anything goes on the compound, and we want to make it a cinematic style match, and we had a pretty bare bones outline structure, like a storyboard, and we were adding to it as we would go. But Billy Corgan was the first one to suggest maybe doing something in what was the Dome of Deletion, the building outside my house, but we ended up expanding it to where it could be a Falls Count Anywhere match on the Hardy compound. And I think that, speaking of the NWA recently, and speaking that Nick Aldis is going to be at Multiverse of Matches, I think people tend to forget just how influential Billy Corgan was in all of that broken universe and all that kind of stuff. And yes, obviously Matt Hardy, it was his original idea, but I think people tend to forget, like, it was a really collaborative process. Yes, Matt Hardy was the driving force, but I think people like, Jeremy Borash and Billy Corgan, you kind of forget their influence in it. Certainly Jeremy Borash had a great reputation just anyway, but certainly coming out of that, got him a job in WWE because of it, and he's still there, as far as we're aware, working on the NXT brand, which is, I guess, somewhat surprising, considering that he's a Triple H guy and he's still there with the company. Just goes to show what a good job JB does, isn't it? But always an interesting tidbit when it comes to stuff that happened in the past of Impact Wrestling. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's Impact Wrestling news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.